Hello, my name is Jennifer Parrish. I'm the Superintendent for Poquoson City Public Schools. I'd like to provide you a little information about our most recent budget update. The information in this update all stems from the Governor's budget that he produced on December 16th. Currently, the General Assembly is now working on producing their budgets. Just wanted to remind everyone of our budget process. We spend time talking about the budget at school board meetings in January and February. We had our budget public forum on January 19th. Our employees are filling out their letters of intent so we know who plans to return to work with us next year. This is important information for us as we develop our budget. My budget proposal will be produced in March because the General Assembly will not complete its work until February 25th. On March 31st, we will send the school board approved budget to the City Council. Just a reminder of where we've been for the last 8 years in terms of our budget development. We've had to make approximately $5 million worth of programmatic and personnel reductions to offset the loss of state revenue, the increase in the Virginia retirement system rates, and other cost increases. All of this since fiscal year 10. I want to talk for a moment about the VRS rates. At the beginning of the recession, the state essentially borrowed from VRS to help get through that recession. They dropped the VRS rates so the state itself would not have to pay as much money into the pension. That also meant school divisions paid less into the pension. However, a few years ago, those VRS rates began to increase. It does mean that we receive some state funding to help offset the cost of the rate increase, but it doesn't nearly cover the cost of it for all of our employees. It also makes it look like our budget is in fact increasing, which it is, but it's important to remember that the VRS funds come into the budget and then go directly out of the budget. They don't help us in the classroom. They don't help us to refill positions that we've reduced over the last 8 years. Fortunately, the city has provided approximately $1.4 million in additional funding over the last 7 years. The first year of the recession, they were unable to support us, but have done so ever since. We certainly appreciate that support, and we know that they can in no way fill the gap that's been created for us by the reduction in state revenue, increase in VRS rates, and other cost increases. As I mentioned, we have reduced our budget by eliminating positions, to be 54.5 to be exact. We continue to lose enrollment, but we've cut well beyond the enrollment loss. We should in fact have 11 more teaching positions. We also eliminated instructional programs in 2 fiscal years. A reminder about state funding. The state cut $2.1 million of its share of standards of quality funding, which represents about 20% of our current funding. The standards of quality are the minimum requirements that we must do to provide an education to children in our community. And by minimum, I'm really referring to staffing requirements. According to the standards of quality, we could put almost 30 students in a kindergarten classroom, something that nobody would do in a school. So we have to hire additional kindergarten teachers because we don't want to have class sizes that large. That means that the additional teaching positions in kindergarten fall fully on the locality to cover the cost of those positions. This is true at all grade levels. Also, across the state, per pupil funding is almost $600 less than it was in 2009. If you start to multiply that against every child in the state attending school, you can see what a difference that makes. We also have seen the percentage of K-12 education share of general fund drop from 35% to below 30%. This means that our piece of the pie has gotten smaller over the years. Certainly we understood in the height of the recession why we were cut, as well as other entities that the state funds, but it's sometimes hard to understand why our piece of the pie has become so much smaller. Does it indicate that perhaps K-12 education is not as much of a priority as it used to be in Richmond? It's important to note that all state school construction funds were also eliminated through the state budget cuts. This means that we don't receive any funding when we go to renovate a building or construct a new building or make any major maintenance changes. All of that falls on the locality. And finally, a reminder that last year's budget, when it came out finally from the state, included a 2% raise. for all SOQ funded positions. Again, this means that the school division had to find the money to fund the non-SOQ funded positions. In the fall of this school year, it was determined that the state revenue projections were not accurate, so that 2% raise was eliminated from the state budget. Our school division kept that raise in for our employees by making adjustments within the budget to ensure that we could continue to do so without any help from the state. Here's a graph that shows us what our operating budget has looked like since fiscal year 08. You can see when the recession hit in fiscal year 9, the steep drop in terms of the amount of money we had in our operating budget. You can also see what I referred to in an earlier slide, where we have started to see an uptick in our budget. But again, much of that is because of the increase in VRS rates, so additional money did come into the school budget, but it immediately went to VRS and hasn't helped us recover those positions that we've reduced over the last 8 years. We did receive some additional funding in our budget from the state that has helped that uptick slightly, but the vast majority of it is due to VRS rate increase. We can't talk about a Poquoson City Public Schools budget without looking at enrollment. As you see here, since 2006, we've decreased by 522 students. 2006 was the highest enrollment on record for the school division. All of the numbers here represent our enrollment numbers on September 30th. So you see September 30th of this school year, we had 2080 students. Now we have picked up an additional 19 students, although this means we've still had a decrease in enrollment from last year. We are waiting for information from the Weldon Cooper Center so that we can make the most accurate projection possible about enrollment, and then we'll build our budget on that. Here are our cost increases moving into fiscal year 18. We're estimating health insurance to be about $118,000. We're estimating that based on a 7% increase. This may be a little bit more or maybe a little bit less when we actually do our budget. Do know I will talk about health insurance, though, again in a later slide. I talked about the VRS rate increase and that we're seeing a big rate increase from fiscal year 17 to fiscal year 18. That comes at a cost to the school division over $194,000. Connected to that rate increase, you also see another figure here of over $14,000. Also, the governor included a 1.5% one-time bonus. Of course, this was only for SOQ funded positions. We've calculated what it would be for all employees. Please note this bonus is in the budget for December, which means if the state revenue does not come in as it's projected to next fall, this could easily once again be eliminated from the state budget, which means we would lose our funding. And as is always the case, we're anticipating some increase in contracts and utilities. First, total projected cost increases of $500. Here's what we envision that we'll receive from the state. Again, as I said, we're projecting an enrollment loss for next year. This is based on a loss of 36 students, but we will make sure that figure is more accurate as we move through the next few weeks once we get information from the Weldon Cooper Center. But with 36 less students next year would come at a cost of $180,000. We are seeing a little additional funding due to sales tax projections. I mentioned the VRS rate increase, which brought us to a cost of over $200,000, but all we received from the state to offset that is $68,000. We are seeing some additional funding from lottery. This is a benefit to our school division, but it's important to understand that what the state has done is move some of the K-12 funding out of the general fund and supplanted it with lottery funding. I would hate to see what would happen if the lottery had a bad year, and what it could mean for funding for public education across the state. And I mentioned that in the governor's budget there's a 1.5% one-time bonus for SOQ positions. Here you see what we would receive from the state, $99,000, not even half of what it would cost to do that one-time bonus in December for all of our employees. This means we do, though, see a net projected state funding increase of $277,000. Keeping in mind that that $68,000 for the VRS rate actually leaves our budget immediately. So if you look at our projected cost increases, what we will receive from the state, you see that we would have a projected budget shortfall of $247,000 based on the governor's budget and with the state's projected enrollment for us. I'll share with you some other considerations for the budget. We have recently adopted a new program of studies, which will change and add some courses at the high school level in particular, which will bring a cost of $19,000 to us. We also have looked at what it would cost for us to increase our teacher and nurse substitute pay by $10 a day. We currently are lower paying than competing school divisions for substitutes, which can make it challenging for us to fill those positions. By adding $10 to our pay, they currently are paid by us $70 a day. It would make us more competitive with surrounding school divisions, and it would come at a cost of $21,000. Many of you remember that we implemented the first year of a new teacher step plan moving into this fiscal year. To do the second year of the transition, it would cost us $187,000. Also, for those who may be interested, and for something that we may consider, a 1% increase in base pay for all of our employees would cost our school division $150,000. The total of all these other considerations being $377,000. Keep in mind, if we place this on top of the budget shortfall of $247,000, you would see that we would be in need of well over $500,000. For that reason, I do not anticipate that we will be able to do all of these other considerations. For those of you that may be newer to Poquoson, just a reminder of the previous budget cuts we've made. We did consolidate services with the City of Poquoson in order to save both the city and school division money. The consolidation of IT is one example of that. We've cut all areas of operations that we can cut. We did this early in the recession because we wanted to go there before we went into instruction. As I mentioned earlier, we cut 54.5 positions and included positions in all areas of the school division, and we have cut now beyond the enrollment loss. We reduced categorical area spending in areas such as professional development and instructional materials. Our employee health insurance benefits were reduced. We went from 3 health insurance plans to 2, with one of them being a high deductible, and some copay costs were changed. It should be noted that in the last 8 years, we have yet to increase premium costs to employees. We've absorbed all of those costs through the school division and through the cuts and reductions that we've made. Also a reminder that we did eliminate 3 instructional programs in 2 fiscal years. Here are some examples of possible budget actions that we are considering. Again, another reduction of categorical funds, but that really does not give us much money. A reduction of instructional positions because it's the only place we can go in terms of reducing positions. And a change in our health insurance plans and or potential increases to health insurance premiums, which again, as I've said, we have yet to do in the last 8 years. We have put a survey out to all of our employees with questions about our health insurance plans and what we may consider doing or not doing. We're waiting to get that data, and then with the support of our benefits committee, we'll make some decisions that may impact budget development. Some of you may have noted that each year we've seen an increase in costs to the New Horizons Regional Education Center. This year, we're anticipating that we could possibly see a decrease in cost. But in the coming weeks, we need to figure out what that could mean for the budget. It may mean some savings for us, or it may mean that we essentially break even, because we are reimbursed for some of our students with disabilities by the state. And finally, I would anticipate we may request additional funding from the City of Poquoson. The city has so graciously provided us funding during the last 7 years. So where do we go from here? We continue to gather budget input, whether it's from faculty and staff, parents, or community members. I do want to highlight that we have a tool that we started using last year called Let's Talk. We have a budget area of interest on our Let's Talk pages. You can find the Let's Talk link on the home page of our school division and all of our schools. So this is another way that you can provide input to the budget, but you're certainly welcome to call or email me or other members of our school division or our school board members. My proposed budget will be based on the information that we have at the time that I issue it, and this is to include enrollment projections. During the month of February, we do have kindergarten registration. We do that in hopes that we can determine exactly how many kindergartners we may have when we start next year. So if you do have a kindergartner for next year, please make sure you come to the registration. And finally, this budget situation is very fluid. We're now waiting to see what the General Assembly issues as its budget from both the House and the Senate, and ultimately what is produced by February 25th. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this and please feel free to contact me if you have any questions.